Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. Patch 11.2 is releasing oh so soon, actually in just a handful of days as of me making of this video, and this update brings with it a ton of class revamps, so many talents, so many new adjustments. However, out of all the different classes out there, there's only one that has barely gotten any attention, and that is the class of Demon Hunter. However, like everybody else, they are getting a brand new tier set, which is essentially the only new thing that Demon Hunters have to look forward to for this season. And with the tier sets we're getting at 11.2, you're actually getting two for the price of one tier set bonus for every single hero spec that you have access to. So for today's video, I wanted to do an overview of the Demon Hunter tier set bonuses for season 3 and how both Eldraki and Felskard are going to impact the gameplay for Vengeance and Havoc Demon Hunters. With that, as always, if you guys want to see more regular updates for the patch 11.2, especially guides once the seasonal content update goes live, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. Now, the first thing we can talk about when it comes to the Demon Hunter tier set is the visuals of it. And as somebody who's a big fan of the expansion of Legion, I actually like this set specifically. This one, while it doesn't really fit Koresh super well, it does fit the expansion of Legion, especially if you've ever experienced the raid of Antorus. And Antorus has this one boss that has a mount drop, and that is the combo of the Fark as well as Shatug, and it's essentially a Charhound that you fashion, or rather a Gloomhound that you fashion into a set. I guess it can also be a Charhound because there are recolors of this set, but it's basically one of those demonic hounds that you make into armor pieces, which I'm a big fan of, and I like how they've done a lot of creativity. I mean, they've done some really classic kind of like light armor with a eye cover for Demon Hunter sets, but then they've also done like full metal Fell Reaver type of looks as well, and even the floating flame skull helm of Emergisil. So they've really been experimenting with some of their different looks, and I actually like this one as well. Now, there also will be different recolors of the set from the Fell for the LFR version, which I actually think looks really good. Normal, which has very much almost like a Devourer type of color scheme to it, which is very interesting. Heroic, which has the Charhound look, which looks absolutely gorgeous. And of course, you have the whole Void look with extra flames coursing out of the helm with the Mythic. And then, of course, you have the PvP sets with the Gladiator, which has this Necrolord covering type of turquoise appearance, as well as the Elite, which is just this fiery Hellfire red. All of it, in my opinion, looks really good. When it comes to the actual bonuses, however, which is a huge portion of the patch 11.2 power gains that everybody's getting, with Demon Hunters, we don't really have a lot to talk about because there's only 2 specs for each Demon Hunter class. We have the Vengeance and Havoc, and both of them share Eldraki as well as Felskard, where most other classes have, like, you know, at least a little bit of variation. There's going to be the least amount of variation for Demon Hunters. They did mention in an interview recently that they found the ideas of a 3rd Demon Hunter spec interesting, and they like the idea of having this like triple Demon Hunter encounter within the Omega raid that plays around with some of the existing class abilities and class designs and even class specs. They didn't say anything like class specs minus the Void Demon Hunter, they just said class specs, and they just find the idea of players drawn to a Void Demon Hunter super interesting. So we'll see if maybe a Void Demon Hunter will be something that will come out in the future. I really think if they were going to push something like this would be the best patch and expansion to do something like this. I mean, they'll literally have a whole raid where a Demon Hunter unlocks a 3rd spec and they become a boss fight. We're finding a Vengeance Demon Hunter, a Havoc, and this Void Demon Hunter, and they have all those unique Vengeance and Havoc abilities. They're very similar to the regular class abilities of a Demon Hunter. So until we get a Void Demon Hunter, I don't think we'll be seeing any new hero specs for Demon Hunters, so they will have the least amount of variety for build crafting. However, the early versions of some of their tier sets that are going to play around the Eldraki and the Felskard are actually kind of powerful, at least early on, and interesting to some degree. I don't like everything about them completely, but at least there's some nice, cool components regarding either way. The first tier set we have is one for Eldraki Reaver, which on its own is a bit of a cumbersome hero spec. It adds a couple of combo mechanics to Demon Hunter, but by itself, it's like a very busy playstyle to the point where a lot of Demon Hunters are even bypassing certain baseline mechanics for Havoc. Like a lot of Demon Hunters I saw on PTR drop an Essence Break and the whole mobility tree all together, which makes it a little bit easier to play around the main components of Eldraki, where you just go for some of the easier talents and let Eldraki do a lot of the complexity, heavy lifting of the build. Eldraki by itself is fairly powerful, but again, very heavy on the combos. You basically want to proc Reaver's Glaive, which you usually use through Soul Fragments as Vengeance and Havoc. Once you throw a Glaive, which does a lot of damage, it enhances your next combo of abilities. Either it's going to be, for Havoc for example, Chaos Strike and Blade Dance. Depending on the order that you do with them, you could either, if you use Blade Dance as a second ability of the combo, you deal a lot of AoE damage. If you use Chaos Strike as a second ability, then you deal a lot of single target damage, marking the target, and there's some cool components with this as well. Like survivability of this build can be really interesting. There's a damage buff window with Thrill of the Fight to maintain, and even a component where AoE damage can turn into pure single target funnel damage, which can make him really good in content like Mythic Plus and even in raids, where priority damage is a lot more important. So Eldraki is pretty interesting, and the tier set doesn't necessarily try to overly complicate the playstyle anymore, but it does enhance the combo mechanic of the Reaver's Glaive through its bonuses. The trick set reads, Reaver's Glaive damage by itself is increased by 50%, which is sizable. All other physical only damage is increased by 25%. What's interesting about Demon Hunter, however, a huge portion of your damage is straight up chaos. It's an amalgamation of physical and magic damage all together, or sometimes just all magic together, depending on which type of chaos spell we're talking about. Blizzard is a little bit inconsistent because some chaos abilities are chromatic, while others are actual chaos. But there's a limit to how many physical or purely physical damage Havoc in particular can deliver. There are some procs, such as with Eldraki Reaver, with the Fury of Eldraki. That's all physical damage from your Blade Dance in particular. But the number of abilities that are just pure physical damage for this spec overall, like from an Aldani that we ran the other day, is limited. Like this is physical, this is chromatic, fire, physical. Then you also got throw Glaive, which is physical as well. But the number of physical damage sources, like purely physical, is limited. But the tier set further amplifies it. Also, as part of the 2-set bonus, Fury of the Eldraki further empowers Blade Dance when cast after Chaos Strike, increases slashes to 12. This is part of that combo playstyle where if you use Blade Dance as a second ability, you will slash at nearby enemies with physical damage, and these slashes are upgraded to be a lot stronger, doing a good portion of your overall damage within dungeons. Continuing with the 4-set, Reaver's Mark now stacks up to 3 times, and further empowers Chaos Strike when cast after Blade Dance, applying an additional stack for 100% of normal duration. And what this essentially allows you to do is to throw the Glaive, go for a Blade Dance into Chaos Strike to apply all of those dots very quickly in the opener, giving you a fairly sizable damage window from the get-go. I mean, 18% more damage to the target, that is kind of huge. It's almost like the old school Assassination Rogue Vendetta, which would increase your damage to the target for, what, 20% for 20 seconds, which was kind of massive. So now you can prolong this damage window on the target a little bit more regularly. And by itself, the tier set doesn't necessarily make Eldraki any more complex. Eldraki by itself already has a lot going on and a lot of things for you to monitor, like this combo playstyle and having to save certain cooldowns in order to pull off these combos effectively is already a little bit like, it gives you a lot of things going on already. So the tier set doesn't necessarily make those things more difficult, it just amplifies all of those effects, significantly increasing AoE damage and also significantly increasing single target damage, which is just a fairly sizable bonus for Eldraki in general. Now, the tier set doesn't really change too much going from Havoc to Vengeance, except for swapping out certain abilities like Soul Cleave, for instance, into the mix. And usually when it comes to tier sets, I like to see how they help out tanks, especially when it comes to defenses, because obviously the tier set is going to do more damage, but how does it help them defensively? And by itself, the tier set, as it is designed, it is purely an offensive tier set that amplifies your damage through great means, which by itself directly doesn't increase your survivability of a Demon Hunter. However, Vengeance Demon Hunters get to play a very fun and unique playstyle where the more damage they do, the more self-healing they can get. And this is primarily through the talent called Frailty. Frailty, in fact, can be stacked up multiple stacks onto a target, and these stacks overlap, so it is something you need to ramp up and try to hold on as best as possible. The more aggressively you play, the further you can maintain those stacks at a higher ranks, and the more stacks of frailty you have, the more damage to healing conversion you get out of frailty. Frailty can also cleave onto other targets, so this is something that you can stack up across multiple enemies, and with this playstyle, really amping up a lot of the physical damage. And since Demon Hunters do a lot of physical damage as part of the build, you are actually able to get more healing, which is survivability, just through raw damage itself. So Eldrazi gets a benefit from a hyper aggressive tanking playstyle, where you're able to actually leech a lot of their health to recover it based through the damage that you do. So for them, that's kind of the only defensive component this has. Outside of that, Eldrazi for the most part is going to be amazing when it comes to raw damage output, and with Vengeance being one of the usually more aggressive tanking playstyles, they're definitely going to be able to get a lot of value out of what Eldrazi tier set can offer. Now, the other hero talent set for Demon Hunters is going to be of the Fel Scarred variety. And Fel Scarred is mostly just all about empowering metamorphosis as much as humanly possible. The tier set does end up amplifying certain elements of Fel Scarred in order to further increase your damage. The two set reads, Immolation Aura deals 30% increased damage and increases Chaos Strike damage by 20% while active, which does a number of things for Havoc Demon Hunter in particular. For Havoc, this opens up the ability for you to heavily invest into the ability of Immolation Aura, which can be fueled by so many different talents within their talent tree, but the biggest one being a Fire Inside, where every time you press it, it has a, first of all, the ability to get a second charge, but it has a chance to refund its own charge whenever you press the ability. With Fel Scarred, once you pop into Metamorphosis, you also reset it and you get two separate charges of Immolation Aura that you can just kind of tick over and just kind of have a bunch of these auras overlapping one another and rolling at the same time. So if I get really good RNG, potentially I might be able to get, I was hoping for more than one use of Immo Aura. But yeah, together with this, you can actually have just a bunch of Immo Auras running at the same time. And if you get lucky, have multiple overlaps of them running at the same time. When those Immo Auras expire, you also have Rage Fire, which does damage based on the critical strike chance that you do. So this could potentially be a good bit of sustained damage during the full Metamorphosis window. Immo Aura also empowers the damage of your Chaos Strike, which deals even more single target damage. But there's also a talent within Fel Scarred called Burning Blades, where your Chaos Strikes, Throw Glaive, and auto attacks deal additional 50% damage as fire. So the harder you hit with your Chaos Strikes, the more dot damage you're going to deal with Burning Blades at the same time. So this ends up being some really solid overall damage, increasing your single target in the very straightforward way. And the fourth set actually plays into one of the more interesting mechanics of Demon Hunter that we don't really get to utilize all that often. Entering Demon form now immediately induces a Demon Surge, which is the mechanic that gives you instant damage from the Fel Scarred, but it also spawns in a Demonic Soul Fragment that grants 20% increased damage for 10 seconds. Technically, this is a mechanic that's already natively there, baseline for all Demon Hunters. It's just a lot of the times, especially for the last few expansions, we haven't had a lot of sources of demons for Demon Hunters to slay in order to gain benefits from the 20% additional damage. But this is technically a thing that's permanently there with Demon Hunters. We just don't see a lot of demons outside of the expansion of Legion. So this allows you to actually spawn a Demonic Soul next to you, very similar to what they did in Shadowlands. However, it has some of the same issues that I see with Shadowlands as well. So whenever you walk up to a train dummy and you press Metamorphosis, you'll now see a Demonic Soul waft out of your body near you, not on top of you, and it doesn't get you to automatically consume it. It just appears near you, and you do need to walk into the Demon Soul in order to be able to get full benefits of it. And then while that buff is active, then you can unleash the most amount of damage with your Demon Surges, building that damage over and over and over, having it grow to some actually potentially really good numbers. That being said, there are some issues with this tier set. I think by itself, gaining a 20% damage window is good. I think there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I like that they're playing around the mechanic specifically. And the tier set also works whenever you use demonic, so this is actually really nice. So you can get benefits out of the tier set fairly regularly in between of the intervals where you get to dive into a demonic form. So you have a fairly sizable burst window that you can do with the Fel's card. My biggest issue with the tier set, however, is the fact that the demonic soul doesn't spawn on top of you immediately. It doesn't have you immediately consume it as soon as you're done channeling I-beam. As soon as you spawn I-beam, you'll have demonic soul, and I have to go chasing after it, grab it, and then you can do a lot of your damage in order to have your demon hunter do a decent bit of overall burst. And I really don't like the fact that there's no easy way for you to be able to capture the demonic soul. As Eldraki, you have a talent where Felblade can actually consume nearby demonic souls, but Felskard doesn't have any components like that whatsoever. So if there was at least a way for you to automatically draw the demonic soul as Havoc, maybe make it a baseline class talent, I think that would make this playstyle even better and easier to use, because I imagine it would be possible with the resets that Felblade has to save a Felblade for once you enter demon form, Felblade very quickly so you consume the soul, and then you follow up with the full burst window. But as it says right now, you'll need to go for something like an I-beam, then you need to search for this demonic soul, then you need to go grab it really quickly, and then you do your damage. And I feel like that by itself can create a little bit of awkwardness within your demon hunter. Like having to pick up a soul and then you do damage, it's just not going to feel that great. And for Vengeance Demon Hunter, the tier set doesn't necessarily change too much. Immolation just increases the damage of your soul cleave by 20% while it is active. And entering demon form also causes a soul to shatter, though for them, the buff is wielded for 15 seconds instead of 10. So it gives them a bit of a better burst window. And like I mentioned before, the advantage for this playstyle as a Vengeance Demon Hunter is just by pressing abilities like Soul Sunder or your soul cleave, you will naturally, eventually, will end up consuming that soul, and you'll get the benefit of the demonic soul. Technically, using soul cleave does only draw a handful of souls, not all of them, though that opens up an opportunity to go Spirit Bomb, which immediately consumes all souls around you instantly while doing some AoE damage. So maybe you will actually end up playing that playstyle just so you can consume those souls a lot more rapidly. And with the mechanic of frailty, the more damage you do, the more self-healing you can put out. So if you're able to deal more damage while a soul is active, you're able to increase your overall healing. However, you also have the playstyle of your Immolation aura that's buffed up by a significant bit. So anything that has to do with immolation and fire damage is going to be greatly increased with Charred Warblades, which could result in some fantastic overall AoE damage, but also potentially some offensive self-healing as well, which also fits the playstyle of Vengeance perfectly. But with that being said, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys for watching this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed this little update. If you guys enjoyed it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very much appreciate it. Also, make sure to join our Discord community, especially if you want to keep up with any last minute changes for the patch 11.2. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.